before the man boarded the plane, suddenly found something bizarre. Today is the 15th of October. The flight number is also 1015. What's even stranger is that the departure time of the plane was delayed from 9:30 to 10:15 a.m. It was 1015. This coincidence made him feel uneasy, so he asked the captain, out of the blue, "How was the flight today?"
Good flight today?
No, very good.
Despite the captain's kind face, but the man saw in his face a strange and inexplicable look on his face. In the cabin, the man looks around cautiously. Before he could take his seat, he sees a strange man smiling at him. Justin responds politely as the flight attendant begins to introduce the flight, and the plane is about to take off. Suddenly he noticed an MP3 in the pocket of the seat in front of him. It was playing the ghost story of Flight 1015. Isn't that the current flight? Out of curiosity, Justin put on his headphones, but as the MP3 played, he was amazed to find the story and the reality were running in tandem. It said that the passengers had fastened their seat belts. Justin looked up to see the flight attendant demonstrating, and it says that outside the airport the rain is getting heavier. Justin rushed to raise his visor. Sure enough, it was pouring outside the airport. It was as if the MP3 had been right. But then, the MP3 said something chilling. In 1 hour, 1015 will disappear. It will disappear from the control radar, never to be seen again. The man laughed at this. Suddenly there is a shudder and the plane takes off. But there are so many coincidences today, so many that the man is a bit scared, and there was no way back. He could only keep reassuring himself that this is all a lie. Suddenly MP3 mentioned there were many unusual details about this missing flight. For example, the captain, Donna. Justin paused when he heard the name of the person. It just so happened that the captain was talking. His name was given. Everything was just as the MP3 said. He was amazed. Play continues. MP3 says a flock of birds will appear near Flight 1015. While the plane was going through a thunderstorm, one of them would hit the engine at 10:21. A loud bang came just as the words were spoken. Scared Justin, he stood up in a hurry, glancing at the clock at exactly 10:21. He instantly felt a little dazed. Fear assaulted his mind. He had no choice but to go to the bathroom and wipe his face, trying to calm himself down. When he came out again, the plane had calmed down. All the passengers were unconcerned by the explosion. Man on plane finds an MP3. Listening to it gives him the creeps. The spooky events that happened on the plane, all verified in the MP3. Everything seems to have been foretold. It just said that a bird would hit the engine at 10:21, and when the time came, there was an explosion. To verify the truth, he called the flight attendant. He asked if a bird had hit the engine. The flight attendant said no. When the man asked more questions, he simply warned not to mislead the other passengers. Then he smiled and left. Justin stared out the window, beginning to wonder if he was being overly sensitive. But as soon as the flight attendant had left, the man who had greeted him came up behind him. He said categorically that it was indeed a bird, and that his name was Amon. He had been a captain. This is a frequent problem on this route. It's just that the crew don't usually tell the passengers about it. With this answer, Justin believed the MP3 prediction even more. He put on his headphones again and listened. This time the MP3 mentioned an important piece of information. The plane disappeared at 11:15, and before it crashed, the captain said one last good night to New York. Checking the time, it was now 10:31. Apparently he didn't have much time left to save the day. The thought that everyone's lives were in his hands. Beads of sweat were breaking out on his head. I've heard MP3s say that many aviation accidents have subtle signs. Some disasters are caused by mechanical failures. Some are panic attacks caused by fires in the cabin, but many more are unnoticed. For example, when a plane is going through a thunderstorm, some communication signal interferes with the equipment. He immediately got up to patrol. Suddenly Justin noticed 2 passengers were watching a live broadcast. He immediately went up to them and advised them to quit watching, but they said they were on airplane mode. Seeing their tough attitude, he was glad to be back in his seat. Putting on his headphones again, this time the MP3 released another big message. Since there's no way of knowing the cause of the crash, so we can only speculate from the boarding list, there were 2 tainted witnesses in the front row of the plane, flying to America, identifying mafia bosses. It is highly likely that they were attacked on this flight. This triggered a chain reaction that led to the crash. On top of that, there was a plainclothes cop on the plane. I wonder if these 2 events are related. He got up to check. Sure enough, there were 2 mafia-dressed passengers in the front row. After making sure they were right, he approached the flight attendant. He wanted to talk to the plainclothes officer. He said the plane was about to go down. But this was a ridiculous claim. The flight attendant thought he was mentally ill. He wasn't even spoken to. Justin had no choice but to find out for himself. Suddenly he seemed to realize something. He sat down next to Amon and decided that he was a plainclothesman. Although Amon tried to deny it, but Justin's confidence grew. Soon he was in front of the killers, trying to find out what he could find. But an accident woke the 2 men up. The argument brought the flight attendant. Justin tried to explain that he was trying to save the plane, but the 2 men, who looked like members of the hit squad, the 2 men, who looked like members of the killer party, said they were footballers. The scene started to get messy, and the crowd filmed it on their phones, until the captain stepped in. It was only when the captain stepped in that the drama was stopped. This is an MP3 that can tell the future. The man learns from it. The plane is going to crash in half an hour. He tries to tell the captain to return to the plane. Instead, he was treated like he was insane. He tried to argue his case, but a policeman stepped forward. He said he would be detained if he disturbed the order again. Disappointed, the man returned to his seat. He put on his headphones and continued listening to his MP3. But then something strange happened. On the MP3, a journalist named Justin argues with the captain of the plane. The man is baffled. He was talking about himself. It turns out that what had just happened had been recorded and uploaded to the internet. Looking out the window at the dark clouds, Justin was in deep despair. Everything he had done was useless. It had all been recorded by the prophecy. He didn't know what else to do. To save this flight, suddenly Amon sat down. He said he totally believed what Justin was saying, because up here at 30,000 feet, anything could happen. It was getting close to 11:15. Suddenly he had a bold thought. Since Amon had been a pilot, if he could just get him to turn the plane back, maybe he could survive. But when Amon heard that, he said it was impossible, because the cockpit had a code that only the crew knew. Justin looked at the MP3 in his hand. He said with conviction that the code was 1015. Amon didn't know why he was so sure, but the plan was agreed. Once he was in the cockpit, he lowered the cabin pressure. Once everyone had passed out, then he would meet up with Justin. Then he'd get a tank of oxygen. And with that, he strode out. Soon Amon was in front of the combination lock. He entered 1015, and it actually opened. Finally he used force to subdue the captain, and began to lower the pressure in the cabin. Everyone instantly drifted off to sleep, but the plan worked and he didn't walk out. This made Justin stare in disbelief. That wasn't the plan. He wanted to go to the cockpit to ask Amon. He was surprised to hear him thanking him. A bad feeling washed over him.
Good night, New York.
Hearing that, he instantly understood that Amon was the one responsible for the plane's disappearance. At 11:15 the plane went straight into the thick, dark clouds. Shortly afterwards, when the man woke up again, he was on a deserted island. He rushed to listen to the end of the story with his MP3, but what he didn't expect was, everyone on flight 1015 had been rescued, except for one man, Justin, who was never found. Hearing this, Justin knew he was trapped here. He was about to pound the ground in despair when a little boy appeared in front of him, followed by all the passengers on the plane. They were all coming towards Justin with blank expressions. He tried to explain to them all, but Justin probably never understood to his dying day whether he was doing the right thing or the wrong thing. He wanted to follow the voice of the MP3 to change the future, but he didn't want to do exactly what he was meant to do.